Hello and welcome to the next lesson in the exam mastery course. Today, for the AQA exam board, we are going to be looking at the themes paper and how it differs then to the religious beliefs, teachings and practices paper that we looked at in lesson 1. So today what we're going to do is understand exactly what is in the exam and how it is laid out. We're going to be able to identify the key terminology used for the themes paper. And we're going to then apply this information to put in place effective preparation and answering exam questions. In this session, we're going to have a look at a couple of model answers that we're going to try and figure out what exactly their marks would be. So the exam paper layout is very different from paper 1. In exam paper 2, for the themes, you're going to receive one booklet. All the questions are going to be written in it with no space for you to answer them. This is going to give you some space to plan out your answers, and all of the titles are labelled with a theme letter so you can clearly see which theme is on which paper. You're then going to receive a second booklet. This is just going to be a blank booklet of lined paper. This will give you all the space to write all the answers to your questions. It's important to know that you must write the question number that you are answering from booklet number 1. There is no correct order. You can answer this paper however you would like. I will talk a little bit about my recommendations in just a minute. Now, the page layout will look something like this. Obviously, it would be like this, but for a full A4 page, you're going to write the question number. Now, when you are looking at the question booklet, your numbers are there next to each question. You're going to write that same number in the margins, effectively. This is then when you're going to write your answer. You'll be surprised at where people have a tendency to write their answers. It goes everywhere. So make sure you're making the lives really easy for the examiners to give you those full marks by making sure you've got really clear page layout. If you want to, you can even underline underneath each time you do an answer. That sort of gives that separation so it keeps it nice and clean. Now, in total, there are 6 themes that we look at. The first one is relationships with families, religion and life, the existence of God, religion, peace and conflict, crime and punishment, human rights and social justice. Now, you'll notice here that the 6 here, some of them might look unfamiliar to you. 2 of these themes you will not have studied. The exam board gives you 6, but they will only require you to try and answer 4 of these themes. What you'll also notice is next to each theme is both the letter that it is associated with, as well as then the question numbers that you will face. Remember, you'll have the 2 1-mark questions, the 4-mark question, the 5-mark question, and the 12-mark question in each of these sections. Make sure then that you answer all 5 questions for 4 themes only. Do not attempt to do 6, because if you do 6, well, this is going to leave you in a bit of a problem. And do all 6, you're going to run out of time. But also, the exam board will only mark the first 4 sections that you answer. So if you answer all 6 sections, it could be that 2 of the sections that you answer are themes that you have not studied. But they're also the first ones, meaning they're the ones that's going to be marked. Meaning that 2 of the themes that you did study aren't going to get marked. So making sure that you choose the themes specifically that you have studied is crucial in this exam. In the exam then, you will be faced with sentences sometimes using this idea of contemporary British society. This is specifically an occurrence with the 4-mark questions. It asks you then to speak about the main religious tradition of Britain, somewhere in your answer, often asking you to refer to one or more religious views from it. Have a think about, what do we think the main religious tradition of Britain is? Hopefully, the answer that you've come up with is Christianity, meaning that somewhere in your answer you need to refer to Christianity. Now, you can do one Christian belief versus another Christian belief. We'll talk about what this also could look like in just a second. Have a think about them. What parts of Christianity are present in British society today? There are many ways that Christianity can be seen in British society. First of all, our laws are based off of some of the religious teachings from the Bible. In fact, the 10 Commandments exist within our laws. The king, who is the king of the country, is the head of the Church of England, meaning that, yeah, there's a pretty strong link to Christianity there. Think about the celebrations that we have, Christmas and Easter, things that across the country everybody celebrates, even if they aren't Christian, showing how religious festivals can be seen across the entirety of British society. What we're going to do now is have a look at what exactly that looks like in an exam question setting. So you'll start off with a point and making sure then you are referring to the religion that you want to. Most Christians will disagree with Asia because it goes against the sanctity of life. This means they believe all life is precious and is a gift from God and should be protected. Right here, I've already got 2 marks. I've given a really clear point of they disagree because it goes against the sanctity of life. I've used a key term. My explain then has become effectively a definition of the key word that I used. Notice how I've started this sentence with the word this. If you have watched my first video on the beliefs, teachings and practice lesson, you will know that starting your explain with this is the best way to ensure you explain fully. What I've done here then is I've offered an alternative suggestion. However, Muslims may disagree with euthanasia because they believe that their life is predestined. So predestination, this idea that God knows everything, why is that going to disagree with euthanasia? Well, this means that Allah has already decided when they're going to die, so they shouldn't go against the will of Allah. This would be 2 basic points, 1 Christian and 1 Muslim, 2 basic explains that this means that, this means that. Really simple 4 sentences for 4 marks. They are 2 different beliefs. They both disagree with euthanasia. You can have different being agree with each other, but their reasonings for doing are also different. Okay, so that's the bit that makes this worth full 4 marks. Next, you'll have explain 2 religious beliefs as another sentence that can occur in some of the questions throughout your paper. Now, what this links to is this idea then of these 6-mark questions not being specific. If the question is not specific on a particular religion, you have to be. So whereas before, that question of contemporary British society means we know we have to mention Christianity, you also have these questions which are not specific. You need to be. So the way you can do this is by saying some Christians believe versus other Christians believe. You could say some Christians believe versus whatever other religion you have studied believe. If you really wanted to, you could even go and say, just on the beliefs of the other religion that you have studied, some versus others. You do not have to always mention Christianity if you are not as confident in doing so. The reason this is the case is because failure to reference religion will result in half marks. So in a 6-mark question, the maximum amount of marks that you could get would be 3. You wouldn't be able to get any more marks than 3 marks in this question if you do not specify your religion. So let's have a look at this question again with a different answer this time, and let's see if we can figure out how many marks it would be worth. The first part of the answer is this. Feel free to pause the video here to have a look at that first part of the answer. And here is the second part of the answer. Now, how many marks would you give this answer? Again, the development of the second point isn't the best. You can argue that to be enough development though. So have a look at the answer. How many marks would you give this? I'm going to show you the answer in 3, 2, and 1. I would give this then 6 out of 6. In that first paragraph then, I've referenced which religion I'm talking about, and I've given a point. They believe that violence is wrong. This is because of the fact that the Bible teaches. I have given the reference to where I have got the quotation from, and I have then linked that quotation back to the point that I made. This idea that it would be wrong, it's sinful, and going against God's instructions. The second paragraph then, a Muslim belief is that violence should be accepted in certain cases. So this idea then that there are some religious believers that would suggest that religious deism isn't always the best option. I have then given that development. The marks come through from that first point, which is violence is wrong. Saying the Bible teaches gets me that second mark. The quotation gets me the third, and the development then gets me the 4th. The Muslim point gives me the 5th, and then finally the development gives me that 6th mark. So it's really important that you reference those religions. You make sure that you reference where you're getting your evidence from, and you give some evidence. They're all really easy marks to drop by not doing it, but they're also really easy marks to gain if they're things that you're not currently doing. So if you're not currently doing these things, using a structure like this is crucial. Finally then, we get to the you may refer to non-religious view section. This is something that you'll see in your 12-mark questions, and it allows for atheist views to be used. Now, it still needs to make sure that both sides of the argument have religious views in them. This is because you're going to need to make sure that you have evidence on both sides, plus the fact that this is a religions paper. You want to make sure that you are using religious evidence throughout your answer. That includes both sides of the argument. So if you want to use non-religious views, that's fine, but don't allow it to make up the entire one side of an argument. You want to have some religious views on both sides. Again, as I said, with non-religious views, it can be harder to find evidence because you might be going off of your own personal beliefs if you're an atheist. You might be going off of a belief of somebody that you can't think of the name of. So therefore, a little bit harder to do. And you don't want to have too many points in your paragraphs without evidence. Having 1 or 2 points in your paragraphs without evidence can be fine, but you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to keep as much evidence in your paragraphs. Finally, then, you also need to think about how you would respond. Even if you are religious, think about, if a question states this, how would you respond if you were actually faced with that situation? Ignore the religious beliefs for a second and go, well, let's go for that pacifism question again. Say, for example, this was a 12-marker on pacifism. You might go, well, actually, if somebody is attacking people I love, I might need to use violence. So this can be a non-religious view as well, because even religious people have morals, as does any other human being, meaning sometimes the decisions that we do are the same, but not necessarily based on the same beliefs. Very quickly then, we're going to do a quick check-in on all the information we have looked at so far throughout this session. Here are 5 questions that I would like you to answer. Reveal the answers to you in a minute, so feel free to pause the video here. The answers will be coming up in 3, 2, and 1. So, how many booklets will you receive? You will receive 2. 1 with all the questions, 1 with all the space to write your answers. For question number 2, how many themes are there in total? 6. But for number 3, how many are you going to write about? Only 4 of them, the 4 that you have studied. Which religion must be discussed in questions with contemporary British society? You must reference Christianity somewhere in them. And then finally, which question can you use non-religious views in? The 12-mark question. That is the only question you can use non-religious views in, so please make sure that you're not using them in the 4 or 6 mark questions. Here then is my final advice. The first bit is to make sure you read the front of the first and second booklet. They are full of instructions which can just help clear your mind, making sure you understand exactly what it is you're doing in that moment. The second thing that you need to do is take your time. I'm going to allow you to pause the video here and write down the timings that I would have for each of the questions. This way you can spend as much time as you need to on those 12 markers. Thirdly, leave some confidence boosters. As I said to you in the last video, leaving some questions that can rebuild your confidence throughout your exam is crucial, because if you leave all the ones you're least confident with at the end, all that's going to happen is your confidence will drop. Make sure you keep your confidence consistent by having those confidence boosters just dropped throughout your exam paper. Make sure you reference religion. The other thing is to make sure that you cross out the pages of themes you haven't studied. Sometimes that can be a little bit confusing as to why you would do that if you're not writing any answers in that paper. In the question, that is because what can happen is you just start flicking through the pages without recognizing what themes you're actually you're looking at and answering. If you cross out the pages of the themes you haven't studied by looking at the titles at the top, or that you don't fall into that trap of answering the wrong theme. And finally, what you need to remember is you just need to relax and that you have got this. You have all worked, I'm sure, extremely hard in the build up to your exams, and if you haven't done yet, you're going to. ready for when your exams take place. If you're using this video now, that already tells me all I need to know. You are somebody who has the right work ethic. Keep on going with all of your exam preparation. I hope this has been useful for those of you studying AQA. If you do have any other questions, please do feel to drop me a message or put a post in the community page. I'm happy to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much, guys, and I will see you in the next one.